What do these two works have in common? This one and this.
Es ist von dort! Ich kann nicht!
The first music is, of course, Johannes Brahms' famous Lullaby from 1868. The second excerpt is by none other than Arnold Schönberg, generally regarded as the progressive who did more to advance music in the early 20th century by dismantling the element of harmony upon which our Western music, Brahms included, is entirely dependent. So why compare Brahms, the anti-progressive old world guy, with Arnold Schönberg? Well, Schönberg is the one who made the comparison. He regarded himself as the logical extension of the great Germanic tradition of Bach, Mozart, and Beethoven, and he included the very conservative Brahms as part of that progressive lineage. In 1933, the 100th anniversary of Brahms' birth, Schönberg wrote an essay, a controversial essay entitled Brahms the Progressive. Many people thought that he was joking, but Schönberg was totally serious. He wrote, quote, "It is the purpose of this essay to prove that Brahms, the classicist, the academic, was a great innovator in the realm of musical language, that in fact he was a great progressive." And Schönberg went on to cite Brahms' technique of developing variation, that is, the organization, the structure, the architectural design of music by the repetition of themes and motifs and rhythms. And what made Brahms' developing variation technique so innovative is that the initial motifs of the music, the little motifs, they begin to change, to evolve almost immediately, so that the process of development begins right off the bat and does not have to wait until the central development section. So in this way, Brahms was able to build magnificent musical structures from the simplest, most compact cells. And we've seen some of this before in the first movement of both Haydn's Symphony 102 and Beethoven's Fifth. But now, in the opening of Brahms' own Second Symphony of 1877, we hear these three notes in the cello and bass right off the bat. The first and third notes are the same note. So what could be simpler? And the French horns respond. And here, there's the same three notes, but in an inversion, and the cello and bass respond. Then the woodwinds enter with the same three-note figure, but now it's ascending. And so this lovely pastoral music wafts over us and transports us emotionally, as everyone expects a classical masterpiece to do, right? Yet at the same time, Brahms, the progressive, invests this music with the highest degree of technical craft as it unfolds. And we're only in the first few seconds of the work, okay? And that three-note motive is now woven into everything, so that when we hear this new florid theme, we say, what a lovely new tune. When in fact, it isn't a new tune. Not really. Its first three notes are in fact the opening, but now transposed and expanded into and during an upcoming dramatic passage, we hear this striking syncopated figure, which is not surprisingly another version of the same three-note motive, but now compacted, okay? Then it begins to develop like so. Woodwinds play, answered by the violins. There's three notes, but separated by an octave. Woodwinds, violins. In this first movement, in the actual development section, the middle section of the movement, this soaring, passionate new theme in the violins is not new at all. You take your three notes, right? And the great progressive Brahms gives us this. And Brahms' absolute mastery of this new progressive technique is at work in every measure of this music, while we sit back and enjoy a great emotional experience. Okay, so now that we've seen what Schönberg was talking about, I want to focus on the symphony's third movement. Not the typical symphonic scherzo you'd expect, but a brief, charming intermezzo, okay, that couldn't possibly represent a fearsome, awe-inspiring, progressive musical intellect. No way, not this. What could be more simple, right? A lovely oboe theme, like a gentle serenade for wind instruments. The only strings playing are the pizzicato celli, the arpeggiated bass line, which will become important a little later on. Now, the oboe theme contains a number of little musical cells that might be used for this developing variation technique, and Brahms chooses these two motives. 3 descending notes. That's it. The 3 descending notes, which are followed by this motive. That's 4 notes. So we'll call this one the 3-note cell, and this one the 4-note. 3-note, 4-note. This 4-note can be in different patterns. Sounds just like the opening of the first movement. And the music is a bit wistful sounding here, since the main key of G major is sometimes touched with a bit of G minor. But here's where things start really getting interesting, okay? Because immediately after this genial opening section, which is about a minute long, Brahms replays it. He repeats it, okay? But not with a standard repeat, literally. No, he repeats it in a sprightly, new, fast scherzo version in a totally new meter, so that this leisurely triple meter, 1, 2, and 3, bum, bum, buddy, bum, ba, is transformed into this brisk duple meter. Here it is. And that dashing repeated motive that you heard, violins an octave higher than by the woodwinds, that is the 4-note motive. Okay, Brahms now spins this out. I'll play it slowly. It rises chromatically, 1 note at a time, like so. Now, higher, 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 and it arrives here in a vigorous C major. That's the 4-note motive. Whoa, but even more fascinating is the fact that the 2 tempos, the opening graceful oboe theme and this new quick scherzo version of it, are precisely mathematically related to one another. Okay, the opening theme, the oboe, and the score says that a single beat of this theme, bum, bum, is metrically equal to 2 quick beats of the scherzo version. So 1, 2, and 3, 1, 2, becomes 1, 1, 1, 1. And now, prepare yourself, because Brahms reverses the 2 tempos now, the 2 speeds, going from the quick presto version back to the slower gentile opening, which I guess you could say are really the same tempo. It's just that they're divided in a different way. Presto, andante is, and he accomplishes this switcheroo in a brilliant way. While we are still focused on the rising 4-note cell that I demonstrated, the one that keeps rising chromatically between violins and woodwinds, it finally settles here in the strings and goes from high to low. These 2 notes, B and D. And while that has our attention, underneath, the strings play sustained chords, along with the cellos playing pizzicato, bum, 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 which Brahms kind of sets up as a guide for us to follow in quick quarter notes. Bum, 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 bum. So, like so. Bum, 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 bim, bim, bum, 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 bum. And there they are. The same pattern, the same exact tempo as we go back into the return of the opening gentle music. The cello rhythm is consistent. Bum, 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 with bum, bum, and 1 and 2 and 3. Dum, dum. Here is this fabulous transition now. And if you say, hey, I really didn't notice any of this technical stuff, that's good, because that's how seamlessly this music is designed. And now you're aware of what is happening just beneath the surface of this genial grazioso opening, which has now returned, even though its original harmonies have become a bit more plaintive now. So lovely. But the main material has now returned, and so if this third movement indeed functions as the symphony's scherzo, then the presto section that we just heard was the contrasting trio. And now the main scherzo, as gentle as it is, has returned. So thus far we have an A-B-A form. And that unison motive in the strings that you heard in the recording, this, that is of course the 3-note cell. But now it's in Brahms' earnest and serious mode. It's in the bass. We are in E minor, and we have a brief cadence in E major. And now, presto! Again, as the music says, the fast trio section returns. And Brahms, supposedly this old world regressive relic of the past, is once again innovating. And this second trio section is in a quick triple time. We say it's 1 beat to the bar. And each beat is roughly equal to 1 beat of our main section. Like so in the presto. 1, 2, and 3. So in essence, this entire movement is written in a single basic tempo, okay? Became, and now it becomes, but Brahms' amazing rhythmic manipulation, okay, how he divides the basic beat, into smaller units as he goes, makes it sound like a new tempo in each of these sections. And this motive now is, of course, none other than the descending 3-note cell from the opening, which we recently heard as in somber mode, yes, and the 4-note motive, which in the first trio became this, and then became, okay, now it appears in this new triple meter like so, with the accent on the downbeat, sort of like the old folk dance, the jig. This is astoundingly sophisticated writing, this antiquated composer writing an antiquated Mozartean serenade movement. So here now is this second trio section. And once again, listen as we hear the 3-note cell transform to this, and the 4-note cell becoming this. And you heard more brilliance there. This three-note motive that we've been following, 1, 2, 3, played by the strings, Brahms now begins to compress it, okay? And he plays it in the strings from high to low. First in distinct groups of 3 notes, just like I'm doing. 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, right? But it now gets crunched into this. Tiny 2-note units, bum, 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 by using the old hemiola device that we've looked at, okay, where groups of 3 notes are then separated out into groups of 2 notes, and Brahms overlaps each of these entrances in the strings. I play it again. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But the overall phrase is still in 4 big beats, like so. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and but Brahms now compresses it into 3 big beats, like so. 3, and 1, and 2, and 3, and then he converts the descending 3-note triplets, this. He now converts that 3 notes into a 2-note motive, slightly slower, like so. 2 and 1, 1 and 2. So this is amazing because everything technically is contracting, is getting smaller, and yet the impression that it gives us as we listen is that everything is expanding and getting slower. Brahms is doing this in a very sophisticated mathematical way. The harmonies begin to shift. They lead us back into the warmth of a new key, F sharp major, which is a half step lower than our main key, G major. Okay. Again, this is never done. The formal return of the opening section, a semitone lower than it first appeared. There's just so much to take in here. So let's hear this fabulous transition now from the quick triple meter with the 3-note motive. Okay, shifting, getting crunched, compressing in a mathematically calculated way, and the lovely return of the main section, but now in F sharp major. Follow it carefully. It's almost as if the technical means that Brahms used to decrease the rhythmic activity also accidentally slowed down the pitch, somehow lowered it, or the pitch of the music itself. Okay, like the turntable accidentally slowed down, speaking of antiquated. And I would imagine that Brahms' intricate rhythmical design of this seemingly simple music would have appealed not only to Schönberg, but also to Igor Stravinsky, who was himself fascinated 40 years later with similar rhythmic experience. Now, F sharp major, the key that we're now in, gently rises back into the home key of G major, like so. Here it comes. So we're back up to speed now for the final appearance of the opening material. So, if you've been keeping track, we have a basic 5-part scherzo form, as we've seen in Beethoven. The opening material, the first trio, which is twice as fast. The main material returns. The second trio, in triple meter, fast. Now the main material returns with a coda. So it's a basic 5-part arch design with a coda. And the coda is brief, and it contains an unexpected sense of yearning in a turn to G minor. And the final appearance now of the oboe theme gently drifts here. followed by the sweetest, most lovable cadence. Like any 19th century composer or 18th century composer could have written for a simple, pleasant parlor entertainment, like afternoon tea for the ladies' sewing club or something like that. Richard Wagner wrote a scathing attack on this symphony, calling it, quote, sterile, tired, and devoid of ideas. Okay, and I know this is a rhetorical question because Wagner approached writing music in a totally different way than Brahms did. But could Wagner have done this? Okay, start with a charming pastoral opening section at a moderate tempo, which then repeats but sped up 4 times faster, which is actually the first trio section, but it's the same music, which then reverses its rhythmic structure, but 1 and 2, 1, 1 and 2, and becomes 1, 2, and 3, back to the opening section, having devolved to its original tempo, 4 times slower than the presto. The central section, a tad somber, after which the second trio takes off, with the basic beat now divided into 3 rapid notes, and the brilliant shifting of the rhythm using that motive, using the hemiola so that we perceive the music to be slowing down as we move back to the final return of the main section, though now a half step lower in pitch. Okay, well, it adjusts itself back up, and the music briefly becomes wistful for a moment, and then the gentle final cadence resolves itself perfectly. Now, could Wagner have improved upon this sterile, devoid of ideas music? Well, we'll hear the entire movement in just a minute, and you can decide. So not only do we witness Brahms' ingenious developing variation technique throughout this movement, but we find that these 5 sections are designed as a series of interrelated divisions of the same basic pulse or tempo. I know this is a lot of technical information, but when Wagner says that this music is devoid of ideas, somebody's got to set the record straight. Okay? But unless you really analyze this music as we've done here, listeners most often just hear this third movement as a pleasant diversion. Right? It even seems a bit insubstantial compared to the rest of the Grand Symphony. It's like, well, that's nice, it's pretty, but let's get back to the good stuff. But in 1933, the musical destructor of all things traditional and tonal, AHH-NOLD Schönberg, was astounded by Brahms' visionary mastery of meticulously designed musical architecture. Okay? The regressive Brahms and the radical Schönberg, best buds. Who would have thought it? I'm Lawrence Rapchak. Thank you for listening and for watching. Here now is the brief and deceptively simple third movement, Allegretto Grazioso, from the Symphony No. 2 by Johannes Brahms.